Mine is the only voice.
Wow.
What have I been doing?
Lay down my autonomy.
After that, it got very dark very quickly.
Hey, my name is Shalise Ansola, and this is Cults to Consciousness, where we discuss leaving high-demand religions or organizations and finding healing and independence through awareness and true individual sovereignty. If you're only listening and you'd prefer to see all of our faces today, there are so many, go to YouTube instead at Cults to Consciousness, where you can join in on the conversation. We love, love, love when you guys comment those words of encouragement for our guests. It means so much to them. They are real people telling their very real, difficult stories, and your support just means the world to them, to us. It boosts the algorithm so more people can see and become aware of these groups. So today's episode, it's a big one. It is our 250th episode. I cannot believe I've conducted that many interviews. It blows me away. Just hit our 3-year anniversary a few days ago of the channel, and we have decided to do a second panel. So the first panel, we did 8 women from 8 cults compare notes. This panel is going to be 5 women from 5 different groups, Amish groups or Amish settlements, comparing notes. So we have so much to get through today. I'm really excited to hear all the different perspectives come together because, as everybody knows, if you've ever watched our channel, these different Amish settlements are not all the same. There are varying degrees of strictness and rules, but there are a lot of common themes that we see throughout, some sort of manipulation, control, or cover-ups of abuse that we're going to get into. So all of these amazing people here today, I'm so excited, introducing them in no particular order because they're all great. We have Lizzie Hershberger from the Swartzentruber Amish. Also from the Swartzentruber Amish, we have Naomi Swartzentruber. It's her last name. Love that. That it's the same group and last name. Elizabeth Hilty from the Swiss Amish. We have Meg Delagrange-Belfon, who is from the Old Order Amish, and then going into Black Bumper Mennonite into Charity Fellowship cult. So lots of different things layered on top of that. And we have Mary Byler, who is from 5 different settlements, mostly Old Order Amish. Guys, thank you so much for being here and joining me today.
Thanks for having us.
Yes, it's a pleasure to be here. It's an honor.
An honor to be here.
Thank you so much. If you are new to the channel, if you've never seen any of our videos, we have done an interview with every single one of these amazing people here today. If you want a deep dive on their story, definitely go check them out. Everything will be in the description. And as we go through our prompts today, we will be diving into specific parts of their story and get to know them a little bit more through their varied and individual experiences. But it will be the tip of the iceberg. I was re-listening to some of them today, and wow, it was a lot to process and remember and to go through, and I wasn't even the one who experienced it. So I just hope everyone here gives yourself grace if we talk about these hard topics and know that hard things are going to come up, and just take your time with these. So the first question, we went over the settlement part, but I would like to hear from each one of you before we dive in if there was anything specific that we need to know about your specific settlement. So maybe just let us know which part of the world you were in and where you grew up, and any little tidbit that we should know about your specific settlement. Let's just go back down the line as we started. Lizzie, can you kick us off?
Yes, thank you again. So I would say, just going a little bit back, my grandpa started the Amish community in 1973. And the community was started where he did want to make some change. I do believe he wanted some different things from where he grew up and had his, raised some of his kids in Apple Creek, Ohio. But in my Amish community, abuse generational curses follow. And unfortunately, what happened, I say in my community, the basic abuse that happened there was everybody thought it was acceptable to their hired girls. I mean, that is exactly what they did. I mean, that is the common thread that they did. And other communities have different things, but that was acceptable. That goes from everybody that I can even think of that I've talked to. That is the abuse that they suffered.
Wow, thank you for sharing that. And I know that we'll probably touch on more of that with your particular story. Your book was great. I read all about it. And and also the court cases, I think that's something that a lot of you have in common, taking your perpetrators to court and what that experience was like as an Amish person or even a former Amish person. So I'm looking forward to speaking more on that. Thank you for sharing. Let's continue on with Naomi, your specific group.
So my grandparents and my aunt and uncle, they moved from Ohio to Michigan in 1980, and my parents followed shortly after that. That was in March when they moved there, and then in May, my parents also moved there to Michigan, and that was a new settlement of the Swartzentruber Amish. And now there's a huge Amish settlement from the Swartzentruber Amish there, and my parents and aunt and uncle don't even live there anymore. My grandfather has passed, and my grandmother is 94, and they live in Iowa now, as my grandma as well.
Okay. Is there any standout part from your community that you want to touch on before we continue?
I mean, unlike Lizzie, I didn't experience it happened to my sister, but I don't know that it didn't happen like in her community. So, but I don't know about other families. But as far as the abuse and stuff, I didn't experience that. And my community is very strict and just probably like all the rest of the Swartzentruber Amish, even though they're in different states, they are very strict and very similar.
Okay, great. Elizabeth, go ahead.
So I grew up in Adams County, Indiana, Geneva, Bern, Indiana, which are sister cities to Geneva and Bern, Switzerland. And I grew up very similar to how Naomi and Lizzie did. Maybe a little more open-minded. I grew up and not knowing about like all of the abuse that happens behind closed doors. But women are technically property to men. And I got married to a man that was very abusive and ended up being shunned by the church. And it's a very dark place. Since there have been quite a few that have gone to prison, a lot of abuse has been exposed.
Yeah, I really enjoyed how in your interview, right at the beginning, you'd said, yes, I had a happy childhood, but I just was blissfully unaware of things that were going on in other families. And then when you got married, you started to understand more what it meant to be a woman in an Amish community. And I think we're going to get deep into that topic as well. So thank you for sharing that part of your life. Let's go to Meg.
Okay, well, first of all, my parents came from different Amish settlements. My mom was born in Fort Wayne, Indiana. She grew up near Bern, Indiana, actually. And there's a lot of like extended relatives that I have still in Bern. And when I was a child, sometimes we went to funerals in Bern, Indiana. My dad is from Union County, Pennsylvania. And so their parents started a new community up in Norfolk, New York. It was Old Order. And a very interesting thing that happened for my mom when she was a girl, someone in the community was upset at the ministers for the ordnung that was in place and what they were and were not allowing. And her uncle was part of, one of those people making those rules. And so someone else in the church lit his house on fire, and everyone passed away except for one person and a little baby. And then they helped raise that baby before they moved to Norfolk, New York. My parents met. My dad was in his late 20s. My mom was, as soon as she turned 15, 16, he asked her, he took her out at, a singing, which is like part of Rumspringa, but they were not wild. And that's how my parents got together. As soon as my mom turned 18, 4 days after she turned 18, they got married. And then when I was a baby, they actually moved to a pretty plain community in Kentucky. They were, Black Bumper Mennonites for a while. When I was 9 years old, they joined the Charity Fellowship cult group. And the abuse in my home. It was just a very physically violent home. So that's how I grew up. A lot of physical violence. And when I heard some of my parents' stories, I understood that it had been, something that continued from their families with things that they saw and experienced when they grew up.
Okay. Yeah. So the cycles continue, even though you weren't raised within the Amish specifically, it was still a lot of the same ways of raising children. And we're going to get into that as well. I think that's a big part of a lot of your stories here today. So, Mary, what about you?
Thank you so much for being so open. I don't know how many of you know this, but in 2004, when I first spoke out against abuse that was transpiring in Amish communities, first off, there were not a lot of us that would collectively speak. And for me, I find it such an honor to be here with a panel of people that are non-practicing Amish women specifically, because often the narrative has been controlled by people who were not Amish raised women. And they talk about us as if they have a voice for us. And this is watching non-practicing Amish women rise into power and take back their voices. And I'm so proud of each and every one of you for that. With that being said, so I was born into an Abe Troyer Amish church, which is a split off the Swartzentruber. And like Naomi, I'm not saying your name right. I'm
Naomi.
sorry.
It's
Naomi.
okay,
Okay.
Naomi.
Okay. We used to call it, yes. Anyways, and Lizzie, I was born into a church that we were pretty much the same style of dresses as little girls. That's what we were. And we also held many of the same beliefs. Like I started around by driving around in a buggy with oil lanterns, just like y'all. And then I went on to live in 4 different old order Amish settlements. And I would like to talk about one of the things that is now documented. And I grew up cooking with the Blue Amish Cooking Cookbook. And in the back of that, you have like some Amish stuff, right? The Amish hold core tenets, according to this cookbook. We hold core tenets of adult baptism, brotherhood, non-resistant, non-conformity, and authority of scriptures. And so regardless of what type of Amish you were, I hear that in every single one of your stories.
Yep.
I hear that.
Very
Wow.
true.
Wow.
Grew up on that cookbook.
Do you know what cookbook I'm talking about?
Exactly.
Pathway. And I would also like to point out that this is a book called the Glaubensbekenntnis. It is the 18 articles of confession that were written in Dordrecht, Holland, I believe in the 1600s or the 1500s. Don't quote me on the year, but it was a couple hundred years ago. And most Amish practice, they teach their baptism when you go after church. They teach the baptism instruction based off of the 18 articles of confession and the 16th and 17th tenet. These articles specifically tell you to shun people and then dictate how to shun people in a godly biblical way.
Yeah, shunning is definitely a huge topic that I want to get to when we talk about getting out of these communities, what it was like for each of you, and the shunning and how that affected you, because each story is so different yet so similar in the hardships that you all had to face. So I guess I want to start here. For anyone watching, I just want to make this disclaimer. We do not do blanket statements on this show. We make sure everyone understands that our guest is speaking from their specific experiences. We do, however, draw comparisons, and we are able to point out certain manipulation tactics or control tactics or things that tend to create an environment rife for abuse or ripe for abuse. So that's really the goal for today, is to show the different ways that extreme control can create these environments for these distortions to take place. And these amazing women here are going to illustrate that by telling their own stories. So again, not a blanket statement. Not everyone who is Amish has had the same experience, of course. We're talking specifically about these groups and these experiences. So having said that, let's talk a little bit about some of the lighter topics before we go deep here today. Some of the things that you were not allowed to do, some of the basic rules that someone on the outside, or now you looking back, you could say, oh, wow, I can't believe I didn't live, or I can't believe I lived without this specific thing. So a modern day convenience that you probably love and enjoy now. Anyone who wants to jump in and start.
Hot running water. It's
A
amazing.
Even just
shower.
cold running
Shower.
water.
A shower. Yes, a shower.
Everyone's like, that was the one thing.
Not using an outhouse, not having
Inside
to heat up water
toilets.
in the iron kettle. Yeah, inside toilets. And I know there's some Amish that have inside toilets, but we didn't in all of the settlements
I
I lived
didn't
in.
grow
We
up
did
on
not.
that.
Well, once my parents were, Black Bumper Mennonites, we had the toilet in our house, but we still spent, some of our cousins had, the ones that we were allowed to visit. I know it was restricted for my parents, but they would still visit. And the outhouses at my cousin's house, there was no toilet paper. We would you would sit in the outhouse and you would just squish up the newspaper over and over until it was soft, and then you would use the newspaper. So I would say a really good roll of soft toilet paper is very, just very nice to have.
Yep.
We
I
used to
agree.
use newspaper too, Meg. I would totally agree.
No,
too.
Mary, it wasn't newspapers, it was Sears catalogs.
I remember those days.
It was a good use for those misleading catalogs. Okay,
Hey, you could read it before you wrinkled it up
right,
and used
right.
it.
But they had pictures of people in underwear. That we weren't supposed to look at that.
But yet we were supposed to use
True.
it.
Or we would have the ones from Pomida and stuff. They had the CDs and tapes and stuff, and I was obsessed over the country music artists. I always read about them and loved looking at their pictures.
Well, I did a bad thing once because of a country music artist. I went to the neighbors and I watched a documentary on Dolly Parton while I was still in the church. If they would have only known the trouble I would have gotten into.
So, Elizabeth, one of my favorite parts, and I think our viewers' favorite parts of your interview was when I asked you, what's the main convenience that you love now? Because you left with 7 sons and you go, a washing machine. And it was so sweet.
It still is.
Wow.
Laundry is almost never ending around here. And having a washer and dryer, which my boys did laundry with the Maytag washer, but I actually grew up doing laundry with the old time rub-a-dub tub. We did not have motors. And it was just the very old ones where everything was by hand crank wringer. And so when I got married, the church I moved into, we were allowed to have motors on and the Maytag washers. So I felt like that was a luxury. And then in 2017, I moved from Bern to LaGrange County, Indiana. And then I was allowed to have running water. And I'd never had running water before in my life, not even cold. And so in Bern, I would pack my water. I would pump it at the well pump and take it all inside. And I had to carry it by the buckets to wherever I was doing laundry. And then when I wanted to drain my water, I had to dump it either in the kitchen sink or take it outside and dump it. And so I felt like I was literally not Amish when I moved to LaGrange County, Indiana in 2017. And I never had a refrigerator before in my life until then. But then when I actually left the Amish, I got electric, I got all those modern conveniences. And I just told my boys, I said, you guys are spoiled. And they go, wait a minute, Mom, that's not fair. We're not spoiled. We just appreciate what we have.
That's so sweet. A quick pause to talk about information control, a huge, huge issue when it comes to cults and high control groups. They want to make sure that they only give you the information that benefits them, which is why we love Ground News, the sponsor for today's video. Ground News is an invaluable resource that we personally use when we are reporting on culty news stories. They make sure to make it extremely easy for you to see the political bias, which direction the story may be leaning, if it is right, left, center, and they even let you know who is funding this publication to give you more of an informed picture. It's really easy to get stuck on one particular algorithm and not see any other side of the story. So this is a really great way to get you out of those manipulative algorithms and see how all of the news outlets around the world are reporting on a story. For example, we were just made aware by our viewers that 2 FLDS teens had just gone missing in Idaho. So while we gathered information, we started at Ground News to see what had already been reported on and if any updates had been made. We can see from the website that 56 sources have already covered the topic, with 79% of them in the center. What I find really interesting are the variances in titles, and you'll see this across multiple different news sources, but it seems like the center titles had a little bit more plain language, while the left and the right-leaning articles had more extreme, catchy titles. One title here, which is left-leaning, used the words cult-like and snatched to be used in a religious prophecy, while the language used in a right-leaning article is children disappeared after religious brainwashing. All of this is certainly useful, and it definitely helps to see how different publications choose to present the information. It's so easy to get swept up in our algorithms and our echo chambers, and so if you really want the full picture to understand what's going on, subscribe to Ground News. You can get 40% off their Vantage plan with our code. It's ground.news/C2C, and you can get that discount there. Again, ground.news/C, the number 2, the letter C, or you can pause the video and scan the QR code on the screen. All of this will be in the description, guys. Thank you so much. Back to our video. What's everybody's favorite modern day thing now? Toilet paper?
I do appreciate the ability to play music without having to hide it from people,
Yes.
Or watch
because I
movies.
used to do that. Yes.
Driving
or
a
what?
car.
I do enjoy a car.
And
You know what?
music as loud as you can. That's my
Sometimes
favorite thing.
I think it's really the ability to have control over my own life and do all the things that I want to do without being told what to do by the men in
Yes.
charge of us. But me.
Freedom.
It's that. I don't have to wait for anyone's approval to listen to music. I don't have to wait for anyone's approval to go over here and do this thing or buy this thing. I get to decide.
I love
I
that.
love it.
For somebody to say, let's just say Mary, both of us are pretty rebels, and we did some things that we shouldn't have, but then you come back and then you get punished then for what you did wrong.
Yes.
You got
Yes.
punished for listening to the, some kind of music in somebody's car, or you went to somebody's house and watched a movie. Then we got punished for that. We don't have to get punished anymore for those things. And I'm sure that's for Naomi or any of Meg or anybody. You got punished for the things you did outside of these Amish rules. Whatever community you were in, you had rules, and if you broke them, you got punished severely.
According to these articles, usually, however, that specific church interpreted that rule. Like in my church, they would have looked at it differently than your church, and same for like every single one of us, I think.
It also depended on who you were.
Oh, yes. Who you were.
And what age you were.
And if you were baptized or not.
Yes.
And like if you were related to like a good bishop, oh, well, they have more power. Or if you were part of the ministry, or if you were part of the bishop that had more privilege and power, or if you were affluent, like you had lots of money, oh, you were treated way differently. Those rules were applied way differently than they were applied to people that the church decided to set a committee of men over and then take control of their finances, their checkbooks. And then sometimes, like, I know people that like were sent to facilities because they didn't want to be Amish. And so they would send them down to Indiana, which is ironically so close to where some of you were. They would send them down to Indiana so they can like come back when they want to be Amish and they want to stay Amish.
Yeah. Let's talk about specific punishments because I know they got pretty extreme. And I think it's important to see if there are any commonalities throughout. I know that one right off the bat that I think we should mention is the corporal punishment for children and how they expect kids who can't even walk yet to obey. And really it's not obeying, it's fear and compliance. So whoever wants to speak to that.
Kan je små beste bredde het som om dove sammen med små de eldre så vi for det kan opptie. Si messe si mal det kvile for brehende hostul. Man det liv I hos for det kan morse det for brehende hostul. And to translate, we are gathered here today to tell parents how to raise up their children. And to raise up their children in love, you have to break their will in a high chair.
You have to break it before 2 or 3 years old, or you will never break that will.
Uh-huh.
That is triggering. There has to be a trigger warning on that. It is absolutely triggering.
I'm sorry.
I heard that. No, it's triggering. That's exactly
Yes.
what happens.
Yes.
It is exactly what happens.
Because it gets preached. And it gets preached in that very same tone.
And they say, in tuchten vermahnung dem Herrn.
Oh, yeah. Can we translate that? I don't know how to translate that. But
I'm not sure either. Maybe Lizzie can.
it's like you raise up your children, and the admonishment of the Herren is like the Father.
And the admonition of the Father, Son,
The
and Holy
Lord.
Ghost. Or the Lord in Jesus
Yeah.
or whatever. Yeah. But that's
Yeah, something like that.
it literally that's why they take that, but they take it out of context.
Yep. You have to drive the foolishness out from them and you have to bruise the fool. Like they get all these verses from Proverbs where they, like, and that we grew up hearing that. Even if we laughed too loud, the next thing we knew we were getting, a beating because, our dad had to drive the foolishness out of us.
Did he also say, Alla laha vatsi fakiri and vina?
Mm-hmm.
Which means all your laughter will resolve in crying.
Yep.
See, I never heard those things before that I'm aware of. So that's interesting. But I know I was raised to be obedient, and we did get punished. Like if we were doing something they didn't like, they would spank us. And definitely it was hard and sad looking back how they treat the kids, because there's innocent children and learning, and they don't know how to control their emotions or don't have the tools to, if you will, and they just like smack them or do what they do to make them listen. So it's interesting to hear what you guys are saying.
For me, I'm still in therapy about this. And for me, I've been in therapy pretty much nonstop for 15 years. But when this topic comes up, it's the hardest topic because I was the oldest. And I'm actually, the first time Shalise interviewed me, I couldn't forgive myself for not protecting my siblings. I can say that I've actually started the process of forgiving myself, but the memories of, each of my 7 siblings, their will being broken before, while they were still in that high chair, is still, it's just the most difficult thing for me. My own abuse is easier for me to heal from than, just seeing and hearing the abuse of my younger siblings. It's the hardest thing.
Yeah, in your case in particular, Meg, your father seemed to really have it out for you kids. And when I was listening back to everything that he would do, it really broke my heart into a million pieces. Again, just trying to put myself in your shoes and understand why someone would be so sadistic and torturous and also be backed by the church. And I think that's what we wanted to get around to in speaking about everyone's specific stories, is this was something that was not only accepted but encouraged, as Mary was just showing. This is preached. This is this is what you're being taught. And so it wasn't just a rogue family member, although it would give permission for someone who had more abusive tendencies to get away with a lot more. This isn't just a one case situation. It was something that was the fabric of how you were supposed to raise children.
It was very emotional there for a minute. Oh my goodness, Mary. Oh, okay.
Yeah, and guys, I think this is a good point to talk about. And if we leave this in, that's okay too. These emotions are going to be brought up, and it's very real and can be very triggering. And if you need to take a second, if you need to remove yourself from the conversation, please do so. And just we'll keep your cameras on if you're okay with that. But it's okay to step away. It's also okay to raise your hand and be like, wow, that was a lot for me. Can we just take a second? Because, bringing up all of these different traumas and these pain points, of course, it's going to have an effect on all of you. And I'm sure that you can relate to each other's stories in so many ways. I don't think there's a single person on this call who hasn't gone through SA or CSA or both, and feel free to take that time for yourself if you need to do so.
Well, and I don't want Mary to feel like, she brought up a very valid point. It's just, some of these things we just don't, we don't think about these, or I don't think about these things all the time. And unfortunately I have viewed them in, some of the nieces and nephews' homes recently. I've been in many Amish homes recently. And it's very, very sad to me. What do you do? What difference am I really making? You know what I mean? Like, I do what I can, I think, but it's sad.
Yeah, I think it's important to recognize that now that all of you have left and you have this ability to look back at the past and see it through a different perspective, you're able to deconstruct some of that. But someone who is still in the midst of it, of course, things can be painful, and sometimes it's really difficult to process why it's happening or that it shouldn't be happening in the first place. And maybe this is a good time to talk about, if you do have children now, how your perspective has shifted, understanding the child's perspective now. Like Naomi was saying, they don't have the tools to regulate themselves. And so why are we trying to beat them into submission? Because it does not work that way. You can't do that. Their brain chemistry isn't at a place where they can just calm themselves. So maybe anyone who has children now or has left with their children, talk about ways in which you are choosing to be a different parent for them.
I'm really sorry that I really did trigger you. That was not the intention. But I do want to point out that as a parent today, one of the most significant changes that I had to make was, one, I took a psychology course when I was doing my college degree. And in that psychology course, I wrote a paper examining 3 different types of parenting: authoritarian, authoritative, and permissive. And the goal was to examine the best outcomes. And so that taught me immediately to start looking at how I'm parenting today. Am I inadvertently reusing the tools that I was taught are the right way to parent, that are indicative of an authoritarian parenting style that completely disregards the fact that your children's brain isn't even fully formed until we're mid-20s. They're not fully developed, and they don't have the ability to make adult decisions at the time that they're expected to conduct themselves like adults. That was one. And two, once upon a time, I looked at how my parents parented me, and I said, oh, hail to the no. Absolutely not. I will never parent my child the way I was parented. And I'm happy to tell you I did not. But then one time somebody challenged me. A wonderful therapist many years ago challenged me and said, why do you have to stop there? Why are you setting the bar at that? You only setting the bar at not parenting as poorly as your parents parented you does not mean that you're parenting. Does that mean you're parenting to the best of your abilities? Or are you limiting yourself to only like doing the exact opposite of what your parents did? And when that happened, I started this whole journey of like exploring. And now every single day that I wake up, I make a commitment to be the best parent today that I can be today. Because I think every day we can learn things from our kids. We can learn things from our kids. Just because they are children does not mean they don't have valuable information or perspectives, or that they're not allowed to question what we as parents direct them to do. Requiring blind obedience or looking at your children as property are so detrimental to your child's well-being. Your children will live with those consequences. And if you're struggling with parenting, I would challenge you to go out and educate yourself and inform yourself from people who have actually studied parenting. Take a couple of classes on parenting. You can go find parenting classes.
Yeah, great. I love all of that. Anybody else want to add?
So with my boys, like in being Amish, I never parented like most of the Amish parents do. Even when I was Amish with them, they, I always made sure they had a voice and were able to be heard. And I included them in on their life choices, on like where do you want to be? What do you want to do? And why? Like, I didn't just blindly ignore them and say, yeah, I'm the parent. I get to make all these choices for you. And I still don't. But my children are now 17, 16, 15, 14, 11, 10, and 8. And it is a joy watching them blossom into young men. Very, very strong young men. And the wisdom they have is amazing. Amazing. But I have chosen to every day be there for them in the best way possible and always be open to the fact that I, as a parent, can make mistakes. And if I do make a mistake or say a harsh word, that I will apologize to them, because that is very important as a parent to be able to do that.
That's beautiful. Anyone else want to add before we move on?
I would like to add that I parent obviously very different than my parents did, but I notice when I go out to my sisters and my brother's houses and how they treat their kids is a lot different than how I was raised. And that really is so inspiring, and it makes me really happy to see that they're not so harsh. And I feel like they really do give their kids a voice and choices as well. And it's enlightening to me to see that they are breaking the cycle even within the Amish.
Yeah, that's all we can really hope for, right? Is to talk about this enough to where people start to understand that they can do things differently or try to push the boundaries as much as possible. I know there are restrictions around that. We've talked about punishments, but I think it's great that there are people out there who are trying to make a change. Okay, I think there were a lot of questions, especially from our viewers, around certain medical allowances. So, does anyone have any stories about situations where they were or were not able to seek medical attention for any major issues growing up?
I didn't experience that growing up, but I have a nephew that recently, last year, was paralyzed from the neck down in a farming accident. And it's really amazing to see what they do for him. They even allow them, in their Swartzentruber Amish, and they allow him to have them to have a generator and a big battery, and they have a hospital bed, and they have in home care, nursing care. They were taking him to Pennsylvania for stem cell therapy, and it's amazing what they do for him. And when it first happened, I was a little worried. I was like, oh my goodness, what if they don't take care of him like he needs to be taken care of? And I feel like they have gone above and beyond, and they do what they can for him, and that's amazing.
That is amazing. Was everybody else's experience the same where you were allowed to go to the doctors, or what was that like?
But remember, things have changed. They maybe are more open to doing that. from the community I grew up in, we were very discouraged from going to medical doctors. Some of it, was for whatever reason, might be money or just the community leaders, but very discouraged from going to the medical doctors. Just from anything. My grandmother was a midwife and Amish midwifed, and she delivered many, many babies in the Amish community so that they would not have to go to the hospital. I do remember an Amish family that actually had twins, and my grandmother happened to help deliver one, and the next one there was complications, and they actually took the mother in, and she delivered the second twin in the hospital. So they did go in, but only under certain circumstances.
Elizabeth, I'd like to bring you in on this conversation. We went into depth on your story about having your babies at home and some of the complications that did arise, and I want to let you speak for that situation.
I had all of my babies except my youngest one. He was born in LaGrange County at New Eden, which is a midwife's center, and like they're pretty high tech, have the proper care and stuff there for them. But it was a midwife from Adams County, that she delivered all my babies, the other ones, and I had 8 total, and she delivered 7 of them. And yeah, she gave me shots, that meds that came from the vet. And also that she would go to Mexico and bring that across the border, bring it in. And she wasn't licensed to do any of that. She just had an old doctor that taught her years ago, like how to do the shots, how to administer this and that. She used morphine that she also got at the vet. But there were multiple times that I almost died from her giving me a shot in the wrong place and not doing it correctly. And I survived. But going to the hospital or to the doctor, for the most part, like the ones in the community I come from, they're pretty open to it. But my ex-husband didn't allow me to go because he said it's too expensive. And he thought it's not necessary. I don't need that extra care. And so I wasn't allowed to go, but it wasn't necessarily because of the community. It was because of him, of my ex-husband. But these midwives that were administering these shots actually had babies and women that died from some of the things that they gave them. And they were actually arrested and charged and were told they can no longer continue their practice. So if you look up Lydia Ann Swartz and Sylvia Eicher in Bern, Indiana, or Adams County, Indiana, their charges and stuff are all there. It's public knowledge. And I believe there was a news channel that did an article on them as well. But they were told they can't practice any longer. But now I find out that there are still some practicing without a certification or a license. They just say, we can't cut the cord. The father has to voluntarily cut the cord, because it's when they cut that cord that they can get in trouble for it. But they can do everything else, just not give shots or cut the cord. So they are, I don't know if these 2 women still are doing it, but there are others like taking their place. But then I would also like to point out the fact that the 2 women, Lydia Ann and Sylvia, did want to get licensed and certified at some point, but the church wouldn't let them. They prevented them. They told them they can't. but they didn't want them to stop practicing because they were saving them thousands of dollars from not going to the hospital. So in all reality, whether they let you go to the hospital or not, it's still all about the money. The money is more worth to them than what one person is.
Oh, that's awful. It just goes back to women being treated as property, like you guys have mentioned.
I would totally agree with what you said, Elizabeth. And
Same.
I now that I'm unmuted, I guess I can say this. So I have several things about medical care. One is I was delivered by my grandmother, who was a midwife, and my mother informed me when I was a teenager that they don't know which day I was born because I was born around midnight. Two, when I was a small child, I was actually taken to Indiana to an Amish doctor, for the record, in your neck of the woods. And
Dr.
I'm not going to name
Osborne?
names because I have no comment. No
I'm not going to
comment.
name
But
names,
in your
Dr.
neck of the
Osborne.
woods.
I'll just
But
say it.
in your neck of the woods. Well, it started with a W. You know who I'm talking about. Anyways, so what they did is they gave me like herbal roots and teas because I was being
Yep.
raped, and I was wetting my bed, and I was having these panic attacks and anxiety attacks as a child. And instead of giving me actual medical care for PTSD in children, or even, magically maybe providing a safe environment, it just could have helped matters along, but they didn't do that. Yeah, I got on the bus and I rode the bus out there, and they gave me like this nail clipper. There was this nail clipper thing and all of these herbs, and every day they put these herbs and tinctures on my hand and hold the nail clipper to see, oh, if it went this way, you need them. And if it went that way, you didn't need them. Because apparently giving children herbs that are known to do certain things, is going to, I don't know, like just maintain like an environment where you don't have the consequences of PTSD.
Can I clarify something, Mary? Just to
Yes.
make sure I'm understanding. They're giving you tinctures and teas to either prevent or abort pregnancies, unwanted
Well,
pregnancies?
those herbs also did both of those, but I was too young at that point in time to even become impregnated because I wasn't even receiving a menstruation.
Oh, wow.
And yes, they gave me those types of herbs too. I actually made a TikTok video about those herbs.
For me, it was not herbs to prevent pregnancy, but my mom was a self-taught herbalist, and my grandma would pull out those nail clippers too. So I've, been a recipient of those waving nail clippers. Ooh, it's magical.
We should have
But
done
No,
the
they're
nail
not.
clippers before we came on this panel.
the other thing is we wouldn't go to the doctor except for in extreme cases. But I'm thinking about my uncle who was a self-taught chiropractor. And I always knew that something about it freaked me out, but everyone else would line up and he would treat them. And right now in Heston, Kentucky, my aunts and, a lot of other women, but my aunts are the main ones who started the herbal tincture store there. And there's people from, there's a lot of people from the outside that actually travel there to buy herbal tinctures because they've actually built a name for themselves. So it's very much a part of my childhood. And, dental care, what's that?
Oh,
And why did I have to get all of this actual dental care in my 20s and 30s, but also just have things that are now just permanently like that I have to deal with because, I didn't see a doctor. I mean, why? Unless your bone was sticking out of your leg, like when my brother broke his femur bone, and Ben was like, I think it was the first one out of us siblings to actually go get medical care because his bones were literally just snapped. But other than that, like if it was extreme, you could go to the doctor, but otherwise you could put some peroxide in your ears. You could drink some herbal tinctures and you could heal anything at home.
And Meg, not even just that, they also have the Amish dentists, and like Elizabeth was saying, and like you were saying, I went to an Amish dentist when I was 15, And that dentist injected me with cow Novocaine. Yes.
Wow.
Amish dentist in his living room. And then I had dentures made because all of my teeth were pulled by the time I was 15. And then my stepfather looked at me and said, maybe that'll shut her up. Clearly it worked so well for him.
Oh my
Um,
gosh,
But an
Mary.
Amish woman in Minnesota, cooked me a pair of dentures on her kitchen stove. You know exactly. Lizzie knows exactly who I'm
Exactly
talking
who it
about.
was. It's my
Uh-huh.
mom's first cousin. Yep. And
So-
and my uncle was a dentist
Uh-huh. And
Wow.
then
in my
you
Amish
had-
community.
Yep. And then if you had like the chiropractor thing, like also another thing, the chiropractor thing. So there was a specific Amish chiropractor that they would take us to too. It's like, oh, you got a stomach ache, go to the chiropractor. Oh, you're having night terrors, go to the chiropractor. Like everything that's wrong with you, go to the chiropractor.
Oh yeah, all it need you just need some bones cracked. That'll fix everything.
Yep.
So, this is what I want to say about everything that's been mentioned so far. It sounds like there were things that may or may not have helped the situation. I'm not against herbs. Drink your herbs, do your thing. I'm not against a chiropractor. If they're licensed, self-taught, that is another story. However, it doesn't seem like the extent of care that you were receiving was necessarily adequate for the things that you actually needed help with. Is that fair to say?
That is fair to say, but I do want
Very
to point
fair to
out
say.
that I also have two brothers that live with disabilities. And those two brothers that live with disabilities, when it became time for end-of-life care, my stepfather refused to allow them to have any medical care. I want to make that point because on the opposite end of the spectrum, when he had a major heart attack, he had a triple bypass surgery. So the medical care can be contingent on the person in charge of like finances or who makes decisions for the family too, like some of the other people also mentioned. And sometimes it is adequate.
Yeah. So someone had asked in the comments, another question I have is how healthcare works in the community. Do people decline getting care for serious illnesses because it would be a burden cost-wise, or are people encouraged to seek medical care for themselves? And someone else asked, how was your immunity to colds, flu, etc. in Amish versus English world? I think we kind of covered the first one as far as it depends on who you are, what point in your life, if it's going to cost money or not. Do you guys have anything to add about immunity to colds or flu or anything like that?
I was unvaccinated and I had measles, mumps, chickenpox, whooping cough, just so many different preventable childhood diseases. And yes, we did get the flu. And yes, the things that go around in dominant culture also go around in Amish communities. You're not immune to viruses or even diseases such as like STIs or things like that just because you're Amish. Like you don't just naturally become immune or build an immunity to that.
I feel like the Amish, like when they get sick, like when my daughter or if I'm sick, I try not to go around other people because I don't want to get them sick. But I feel like the Amish, they don't really care, at least in my community. Like they'll still go to church if they're sick, unless they have a fever and they're really, really sick. But otherwise, they don't really care. They still go out or have people come to their house. I don't know. It's interesting to me. I try to always be respectful, not to make other people sick, because I feel like it can be avoidable.
I wasn't vaccinated as a child, and I have never vaccinated any of my children either. I had chickenpox and whooping cough growing up. My older boys had whooping cough when they were very young, but so far, none of them, not any of them, have had chickenpox, measles, or the younger ones have never had whooping cough that I was aware of. As far as flu and viruses and stuff, like I can say my kids are very, very healthy and they have strong immune systems. But I myself, like my mom would say, everybody else could get sick in my family and I wouldn't get sick. But then when I got sick, I was really sick, which was maybe once a year, and sometimes not even that often. And I'm still like that in many, many ways. So I don't know, is it also good genes that me and my boys have? That we don't get sick very often? I don't know. We eat healthy. I know that, but I love the natural world, but I do not love the people that make claims and say we can heal this and we can heal that when there are obviously other things going on underneath.
Yeah, I think there's definitely room for both, right? There's room for natural medicine, and there's also room for getting more advanced help when you need it, because that's the
Yes.
point of medical advancements, and they do save lives. Let's talk about as it pertains to health in your body and your anatomy. I know a lot of you didn't receive any type of sex education or have any understanding of your own anatomy, even down to not having names for your own anatomy. And I think it's important to mention the different variances or different degrees of which you were educated, because that eventually can lead to a distorted view of sexuality. It can lead to not understanding consent. It can lead to not understanding what's happening to you if something is going wrong, and not knowing if you can report it or talk about it. So I guess first, because it's a big topic, I know, can you guys describe to what extent you had sex education, if any?
I had these wonderful booklets called The Sacred Subjects. They weren't necessarily read to me aloud, but I did read these as a child. I can tell you where they were in my home, and there's a specific booklet called To a Girl of 11. And some of the teachings tell girls of 11 to not climb up on a ladder in front of their brother, or, don't appear in front of your brother in your skinny night clothes or underdress, because, even if they never know it, they might have caused their brother to sin. And I'm paraphrasing here, but these are specific publications written by an Amish minister that if your parents use them, there are directions to parents in these booklets that say, do not let your children have access to these booklets, but rather these are tools on how to instruct your children as they grow up. These booklets also include things like, I wish I could have confided in my parents, courtship and marriage and pregnancy, and even before you begin courtship, because you have to prepare for courtship.
So, Mary, for you specifically, when it came to sex education, I think you had mentioned in one of your interviews that you didn't understand what menstruation was, and it was a huge shock to you when it happened.
I had no idea what was happening to me. I thought I was going to die. I didn't know what was happening.
That's awful that you're not even prepared for the most basic thing that you're going to go through. And I think a lot of you have similar situations. Does anyone want to speak to that?
My mom told me when I was 10 or 11, I think. She explained it to me. So when it happened, I knew what it was. So I'm really grateful for that, because hearing, Mary, that you didn't know what was happening, that must have been terrifying.
Yeah, my mom also did a pretty good job of telling me. She would always tell me when she was pregnant, and she would tell me in a really very pretty elementary way what's going to happen to me once I'm around the age of 10. I didn't get my period until I was 15, so I thought, something was really wrong with me. It turns out I had severe endometriosis, and part of it due to trauma. I watched, when you grow up on a farm, you kind of know, you see animals mating, and so you kind of figure a few things out. That was my sex education. When I was 18, probably just a few weeks before I got married, where the bishops and the parents decided that I was kind of in an arranged marriage. I was in a betrothal, and a few weeks before I got married, one of the older women in the church would hand me a book that would really explain what sex was. And even though I had been sexually abused, it didn't mean that I really understood what sex was. But that book was it wasn't something from Pathway Publishers. It was considered very modern material to the standards that we grew up in. And so it was considered like, this is very like more forward thinking, but it was still deeply evangelical and framed sex as something that a man needs, and that if a woman to respect the husband, she's going to comply, always, never say no. And it really set me up to go into a dysfunctional relationship where I was essentially, raped within marriage because I didn't have consent. Consent was never part of any conversation, really, ever at all. And if, the sex that happened to me, that was just my fault. I was the one that caused someone else to stumble, essentially, right? So all of that was very, very unhelpful.
And Meg, you bring up this point of like not being able to say no. So like my mother told me right before I escaped that like you have to do whatever your husband wants when you get married, when he wants, and that means inside the bedroom and outside. So essentially it was the same teaching, even though like you had this more forward thinking book. That's just mind boggling.
Yeah, no consent allowed. You cannot say no though I don't think you can really say no ever. Maybe you would have more choices to say no if you were a male growing up in this culture, these similar plain circles. But I think as a girl, I don't have a memory of a time where I could have said no. That was an entirely new thing for me to learn outside of, the plain circles, was just to have a choice or to be able to say no.
Yeah. Elizabeth, I know with your story, that was one of the big aha moments for you when the police were finally called because of domestic violence and you learned what marital was for the first time with the police. I think that was such an eye-opening time for you. Do you want to speak about that at all?
Sure. So like I was just taught you do whatever your husband tells you. Like I didn't know that you could say no, or if you said no, that it was considered rape. So when the sheriff came and he took my statement to remove myself and my children from our home, then he said he needs a statement. Well, he just sat there like, and he let me talk. And in my mind, I was like, you're not even saying a word. Do you think I'm crazy as well? And like just this stupid Amish woman that doesn't pay attention to her husband and like is not submissive. But after I was done, then he looked at me and he goes, "This makes me so mad." He said, "Do you know what this is called?" And I said, "No." And I said, "Well, it's abuse." And he goes, "Well, what you just described to me is rape. It's rape." And I said, "But we're married." And he goes, "It's marital rape. That happens in marriages as well." He said, "When you say no, regardless if you are a wife, a girlfriend, or who you are, no means no, and they are to respect that." But that like took me down a whole new road that I was like not expecting. And it just opened my eyes. But then in court, the ministers and many of the Amish men that testified on my ex-husband's behalf sat there and they said that there is no such thing as rape in a marriage. Like they just don't know where that comes from.
They said that in court.
And
God.
Yes. And then
I believe you.
The prosecutor asked them, like, what kind of message are you sending to the young Amish girls and to the women within your community? What kind of message is that sending to them? But they all
Mhm.
testified like how, and I actually, this past year, I was given all the letters that the Amish people wrote into the judge, that were sent into the judge to the court on behalf of my ex-husband. And there were almost 30 letters, and I read them. The prosecutor had, back in 2017, when I had asked about those, he was like, I don't know that you want to read them. And
Mhm.
I was given that opportunity almost a year ago, and I took it. And I'm glad I didn't read them back then, because I don't think I could have taken it. But I was able to do it, and it was actually a healing moment for me. But one of my ex-husband's uncles, and like, I don't care, I mention names, because I'm like, these people have their names on public court documents. But it was Stephen Hilty, and he's a highly respected Amish person. But he wrote in his letter that Willis has a high sex drive, and men have higher sex drives than women do. And the reason for that is because the Bible talks about spreading the seed. And us men are called to spread the seed. You know, I should not have found that funny, but I was laying in bed when I read that letter. I roared with laughter, and I said, where is his seed being spread now? It's not funny, but I just
I'm laughing
lost it.
with you. No.
But there is a passage in the Bible where, like, about spreading the seed, but that is not what that means. There is something about self-control too.
Right.
Right.
My my mom tells, she writes about this in her book, but there was a time where the midwife, even the Amish midwife, said that you should probably try something to stop getting pregnant, because she kept hemorrhaging and she almost died in every delivery. And and she had already had, at this point, 4 children or something already. So she went to my dad and, just wanted to go on birth control or, something simple, right? And he had this whole thing about how God would strike him dead if his seed couldn't, like, do what it's supposed to do. And there was this whole thing about the seed. So I'm just confirming that this is like a thing for Amish men, because I've heard the same thing.
Are they not allowed to ejaculate if it's not in a woman? Am I
No.
remembering that
Oh,
correctly?
no. They
They
have to go
could
to church and do a
never
confession.
ejaculate.
And you know what?
See,
I
okay.
had to
I
go to
have,
church and do confessions because I was pregnant, and then, like, he couldn't do his thing inside of me because it would hurt me, which I don't know why he sometimes cared about that and others time didn't. So I had to masturbate for him, but because he had to do a confession because he masturbated and I was the one that did it for him, it was either go inside of me and, like, do it, or then I give him a hand job. So I don't know if that's triggering to anyone or not, but it, like, grossed me out to the point that I almost vomited. But I had to go to church with him and do a confession. And, like, I now can laugh about it, but back then it was not funny.
You wait in
It's
front of the
hilarious.
whole. Hold on. Okay,
I
in
don't know
front
if
of
they
the
knew
whole
the little bitty
congregation, you had to go up and
details.
be like, "Hey, I had to give my husband I gave my husband a hand job. Please forgive me."
I just
No,
have one question for you, Elizabeth.
Go ahead.
Were you in your kneeling pose or was it a sitting confession?
I thought you meant the other way around when I was doing it.
Mary,
I had to get on my hands and knees.
Lord
I'm
save us
familiar
all.
with that.
Okay, so can I just make some? Yeah, this is why. I mean, this is all valid and everything, but this is why I don't quote Bible verses.
I know.
I don't ever do it because somebody will always have a better Bible verse that will contradict on what I'm saying. Because it's just like what you were saying, that, this is, somebody else will always have something else to go on top of it. So I don't quote Bible verses because I just don't. I mean,
I don't even care what the Bible says.
I
Like,
care. I just don't quote
so
them
wrong.
because somebody is always going to up me. They're always going to up me on just like this, like letting your seed not go out. Well, then somebody else is going to have something else. Well, you shouldn't have done what you did,
It's
Elizabeth.
quoted
Do
so
whatever,
out
do
of
to your
context.
husband what he needed to have done.
So let me jump in here for a second. Holy hot topic. I love everyone's just like popcorning, like going off. Okay, I think what we're trying to say here is what seems to be a through line with everybody is Bible verses or rules or whatever it is taken out of context to appease the man, to avoid punishment, to basically give them permission to assault women, assault their wives, assault whoever the hell they want and get away with it, or be punished just slightly. And it seems like that is the case of using these rules for the benefit of the men. Does that feel resonant to everybody?
Absolutely.
They're legitimizing scriptures,
I
uphold
agree.
patriarchal authority, and justify and dismiss abuse.
And I wanted to bring Lizzie in this conversation because I think she was having technical issues when we were starting this topic. So, Lizzie, we were talking about purity culture and ways in which that ends up distorting certain things and creating a predator's paradise because you don't have any real idea of what sex is, what consent is, names for your own anatomy. Is there anything that you want to add on that front? Because I know that's a big part of your story.
I, did not have the sex education. And, what happened to me was done by a married man twice my age. And he groomed me. I mean, and did many things that people often don't talk about, gaslighting, and you could go to any extent. What do you want to? But he was 28 and I was 14 when he raped me over a period of time. And that is unfortunately what often happens in the community I grew up in. It is a very unfortunate thing, but it is something that, again, he would have used scriptural Bible verses to, to allow him to do what he was doing. He was not a deacon at the time. He got promoted to a deacon 2 years after what he did, and he's still a deacon to this day. And he got charged in court. Anybody can look up his files. He did confess. He tried to take a lenient plea offer because he confessed early. And he had initially confessed to the church, and he only got 6 weeks of shunning. There's just a whole lot that can go with that. But at some point in this conversation, yes, I lost communication for a little bit. I would love to talk about him coming up for 5 years of asking for early release from probation.
Yeah, I think this is a good point to get into what the actual punishments are for perpetrators and why it just happens over and over again because there's no real accountability. There's no law enforcement called. So whoever wants to jump in, I know a lot of you have experience with taking your perpetrator to court.
Well, when the church just sits there and slaps somebody on the wrist, or as my former bishop, Dan Miller, said, "Oh, I don't understand why we can't take care of it." Yeah, we heard, like, he's published in newspaper articles saying this stuff. You can look it up. But he said that Well, we had long heard reports of child sexual abuse transpiring in these communities in Vernon County, Wisconsin. But, we just didn't know what to do. So, one, you admitted you don't know what to do and you knew about it. And then, two, you're turning around and you're telling the judicial system that, well, we're Amish. The bishop can take care of it. But what kind of education does somebody have when they have went to Amish school? They have reading, writing, arithmetic, math, maybe a little bit of history. We learned German. In our schools, I went to 5 Amish schools in 3 different settlements, 2 in Pennsylvania, 1 in Wisconsin. And in all of these schools, we had a similar theme. The church had some kind of authority over the curriculum. The curriculum was very limited, very, very narrow. There was no social studies, there was no science, and there was no health taught. And so when you have people who have never been taught anything about health, who are in positions of power and authority, who are now trying to claim they have rehabilitated offenders, by shunning them for 6 weeks, ironically, in my case, perpetrators were shunned for 6 weeks too. Just side note. But by shunning them for 6 weeks, or even if they send them off to a facility where they're using unlicensed and unqualified counselors who have the same type of education, what qualifies them to provide this kind of rehabilitation? And have they looked at the rates of recidivism? And do they actually report that recidivism when it occurs within the community to law enforcement external to the group? Or are they keeping it contained within the church?
Yeah. Does anyone want to add to that as far as internal punishment versus going to the police?
My ex-husband, Willis Hilty, and you can look him up. Everything is public. There are court documents, and he is a registered violent sex predator, not just an offender, but as a sex predator. And so the Amish tried hard to keep him out because they shunned him for 5 weeks. And they sent him to PA, Whispering Hope. They sent him up to Melvin Swartz in Michigan, Harmony Haven. They had him different places. They had a counselor from PA come out and testify on his behalf, trying to keep him out of prison. Thankfully, the judge seen through all that and still sent him to prison. But in the meantime, these Amish turn around and hire 4 attorneys. And he gets modification after modification. Then they write up a safety plan, 13 or 16-page safety plan that is handwritten by Willis himself and turned into the probation officer. And they have 3 couples, his parents, his brother and his wife, and then one of his power attorneys and his wife. 3 Amish couples that signed, that are on there, that they will hold him accountable. And I told the prosecutor, I said, there's no way they will hold him accountable. Like, anything he does, they will just sweep under the carpet. But ever since the probation officer approved it, everyone went along with it. They approved that safety plan, got it into place. And now ever since, like, I just battle with family court because his attorney keeps pushing, this and this are the things that the court's seen that they approved this because the Amish said he's doing so and so. Well, that doesn't mean nothing, because their number one goal is we take care of our own. And we do not like when outside is involved. Well, because I got law enforcement involved, I was shunned. And I was shunned when I left. And that followed me to the community I moved to. And to this day, there are people that will literally, if I arrive at a viewing or someone of my relatives, there are people that will leave the property because I am there. And I received, and so did my parents, we received unsigned letters, notes saying, repent from your sin before you take it any further. Like, that was directed towards me when I was made out to be the bad guy, he was made out to be the victim. And it's still that way.
Can I ask, Elizabeth, have you ever seen this booklet called Keys for Establishing Support Groups and Accountability Teams?
Oh, I know all about
Have you ever seen it?
Yep. And they also have these abuse.
I just want to read.
Go ahead. Go ahead,
I
Mary.
just want to read this part because what they did sounds like they did verbatim what they describe creating in this booklet. And one of the objectives for everybody to know is to establish good working relationships with CPS, district attorneys, county, and state officials. It is not to work around or avoid the law, but working with the law to find alternatives in a Christian setting instead of prison terms in a worldly environment. And they're doing exactly what this is so hypocritical, Elizabeth. Nobody deserves that. Nobody. Nobody needs to experience that. Nobody needs to have a stack of letters this thick written by Amish people on behalf of the perpetrators of their rape. Nobody. Nobody needs 4 busloads of Amish people showing up in a courtroom, getting up and crying and making a mockery out of the witness stand as if this court is their own personal play. It is not a play for them. These are real people's lives. The survivors of this see things that people cannot understand or comprehend unless they have experienced it, because it is so detrimental to your well-being, because your entire community comes out against you. They cast you out like you're a worn-out shoe or the dirt beneath your doorstep, and they justify it based on the Articles of Confession 16 and 17. Remember that.
The support groups, they are not for the good. They are having these abuse awareness team meetings and across the nation. And all that is doing, I know there are people that would disagree with me, and that's fine. Like, you don't have to agree with me. You might see a different point of view because you don't come from where I did. But all that is doing exactly what Mary read. They are finding alternatives to cover up and going underground with their abuse.
It's less overt.
They will be.
Go ahead.
I interviewed the top guy from the Amish abuse meeting, and he will be in the documentary that will come out. And he will contradict himself in exactly what you said that he wants to do and he isn't doing.
They're getting more covert instead of overt. Like it's less in your face.
Mm-hmm.
It's less in your face.
Mm-hmm. Well, they're doing less and less. I mean, they're not seeing 800 people.
Can I jump in here? Because I want to, for the audience too, I want to clarify some things. It seems as though, and I know a few of you here have gone to court because of what your perpetrators did to you. You were victimized. You took them to court. The Amish communities rallied around the perpetrator instead of you. You were outcast, shunned, all of those things. So I want to make sure and clarify in case someone is missing that. And what I'm hearing is it's less about the offense and more about their reputation or the perpetrator's reputation, because they're not protecting their women, they're not protecting their children. They are simply rallying around the perpetrators to save face. Is that right?
Well, because it's good for business if you rally around a perpetrator. And to understand that, you need to know that tourism in Lancaster County alone, last time I checked was 2023, it had generated over $2.4 billion. Let that sink in. And that's not just benefiting Amish people, that's benefiting the entire local economy.
Absolutely.
Go ahead, Liz.
So it's more about the money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's just, Mary is correct on the Lancaster. I do not live in that area, but my area, they benefit on tourism money. That is what you benefit on, and that's what that's what they show up and in support. And just like I said, I'd love to get into, my perpetrator was up for 5-year probation release. It was told I should just expect it. That's expected after 5 years. He's been a good Amish, abiding citizen. He has no offenses, and I should just accept it. But I did not, and he did not get released on early probation. But man, it takes letters and court hearings and things. People have to stand up for other survivors. We have to stand up for each other. We can't do it alone. I couldn't have done it alone. Mary couldn't have done it alone. People came aside of her and stood by her. So we have to stand together. Together we can make a huge difference. It is not easy. It's not. Elizabeth did not do it easy. We have to stand up for each other. That's what I would like to be. The common theme here is, it's not easy, and we can, we can talk about things, and we all have a lot of things in common, but we have to come together and help each other.
Lizzie, when you say we cannot do it alone, the only thing that kept me alive throughout all of those years is all the people who were behind the scenes and who were being supportive. The people who, like many people, came from insular communities. Some people were atheists, some people were religious, non-religious. What I found out is that the people who got your back, they're going to have your back. And when you go through something like that, you will be surprised at how many people will stand with you.
That's something that Mary made a good point of. When you're going through these trials, and in my role primarily now is I love to stand with survivors going through the court system or having court things. But it doesn't matter when you're in that. I don't care where you come from. It doesn't matter. You all come together as kind of this, I don't know what you want to call it, but you all have something in common. We're all there standing. It doesn't matter what background you come from, what race, what nationality, it doesn't matter. You're all there to support each other. And that's the only way that I see that we are going to make a change. It's going to take time, but we have to stand with each other and help each other get through these tough times.
Yeah, I agree. And there's so much to talk about in terms of escaping, finding your life, normalizing in some sense. You're not normalizing, regulating your nervous system and coming back into yourself, finding out who you are, finding out your likes, dislikes, navigating this English world with little to no knowledge of it. And I wanted to bring Naomi back into this because I know you left, Naomi, before you were even an adult, and you wrote a whole book about it. It's fantastic. Highly recommend. It's back here somewhere. Oh, look, let me pull it up. It's the last one on the shelf here. Just so happens, The Amazing Adventures of an Amish Stripper. Guys, if you want to get hot and bothered and laugh and cry, this is your book. You had some challenges after leaving because you were, I think it's fair to say, ill-equipped to handle the outside world with no real knowledge of it. Can you talk about what that was like escaping and how you tried to navigate everything?
It was very challenging and overwhelming because Kevin, the guy's name in my book, so I'll just call him Kevin, but he is the guy that I asked if he could help me escape or if I could have a place to live. And he said yes. And right after I did that, he took it onto himself to have sexual relationships with me, even on my Amish farm. And I didn't leave to be with him. I just wanted to have a place to be. And after, I didn't even know he was married. And after I left, our sexual relationship continued. And that was so horrible because I felt so guilty and I always blamed myself because his wife didn't know. And at first I stayed with his mom and he invited me to parties, and there was one Saturday night where there was him and two other guys and I was blacked out drunk, and I remember that they all had sex with me, and then the next thing I knew, I woke up in this lady's bathroom by the toilet because I was throwing up. But it was really difficult to navigate because I wanted to have this amazing life, and I just felt so guilty all the time because I knew what I was doing or what we were doing was wrong, and I didn't know how to deal with it. I didn't have anyone to talk to. And now I don't talk to him. I haven't talked to him in a long time. He tried to contact me on Facebook. I blocked him every time that he tried to reach out to me. And his now ex-wife, her and I are actually really close friends. And I've apologized to her and brought it up after I sent her my book because she always wanted to read it. And she was like, I always kind of knew because of how you guys acted around each other. But just for a healing process, I felt like I had to apologize, and she was very grateful that I did. But that I never really realized how hard it was until I started writing my book. I realized I had just shoved it all down, and that really writing about it really helped me to heal because he definitely groomed me and was taking advantage of me. I was 17 and he was 33 when it started.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. Your story is a testament of how you can get up, get kicked back down, get up, get kicked back down. I mean, all of you have faced things like that, and you're still here and you're still fighting and you're still talking about it. And I think it's so inspiring, and so many of our viewers find all of you inspiring too. And I just want to give you the opportunity to talk about some of the hardships, the real hardships, not just how do I figure out how to use a shower, but the hardships of really settling into life outside of your settlement, of everything that you've been taught, everything that you were used to, whether that's mental, emotional, physical, ways in which you had to kind of figure things out, and things that you may or may not have faced. I mean, Lizzie was almost sex trafficked by someone, just getting picked up by the wrong person who offers a ride. I mean, these are very real things, and it's terrifying to think about. And so I just want to give you guys the opportunity to talk about that.
And I also feel like that really, because when I first left and all that happened to me, that really kind of set the stage of how I dealt with relationships throughout my life after I left. Like, it set me up for failure, and it took me a really long time to realize and to be able to create a lasting relationship where I had a voice and I wasn't just taken advantage of. So that was
Yeah.
super challenging, but I'm grateful that I'm grateful to be where I am now.
Naomi has a different, I mean, we all have our unique stories, but Naomi experienced some different things growing up. I have some different views because remember, we are cousins. So I have some different aspects of, what I heard about her family and different things. But I think that initial time when you actually leave the Amish, I mean, I was very vulnerable. I mean, like you said, I was almost sex trafficked, and I did not realize it until years later when I was writing my book, and I was like, oh my goodness, I could have totally, like, I would have been out, nobody would ever seen me again. I mean, I have no doubt in my mind that was the plan. So I guess I would just hope that all of us, in our own unique ways, are inspiring others to reach out to us, tell us, what your story is, how we can help you. Sometimes we don't have all the answers. I don't have all the answers, but you know what? I am here to help inspire, and I am here to listen, and I am here not to judge. I do not judge. I am just here to be an inspiration to somebody else.
Yeah, thank you. Mary, you wanted to add something?
I just wanted to say thank you, Naomi, for talking about that. I think that many people often don't realize that, like, when you were a minor and you're groomed to believe all of these things about yourself, you don't know that you can say no. Like, you are literally groomed to become the perfect victim, the silent victim, and it takes a lot of guts to be able to say that. To sit here today, you have to reach inside of you and face all the things. And you've done that. And I'm very grateful that you're here today to share that with us.
Thank you. And even to add a little bit more to that. So I lived with this man's mom for 2 months, but I was very lonely there. And eventually Kevin and Christine allowed me to move in with them. And they didn't let me get a job because they said if I was going to be English, I had to learn the ways of the English until I was 18. And so I was in this situation where I felt like, what if I say no and he'll kick me out and I don't have a place to live? So that was like another whole level added on
Mhm.
of just being put under this
Coercion.
yeah,
It's
it was
manipulation
crazy
and control.
triggering to
That's like financial and resource control. Because if you're going to become unhoused, if you say no, you can't really say no. It's called coercive control because of that, because it manipulates you into saying yes, even though you can't really consent because you're not an adult and you don't really know that you can say no. You feel like you're trapped within that.
It's actually human trafficking.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I was trafficked as an Amish kid, just so you know, Naomi. But like, yes, it is trafficking. The Amish church had a great time with that. Yes.
Wow, Mary, I didn't know that. Have you spoken about that before?
I wrote about it in this book.
Many of us have books. It's a way of healing. It's not a way of, I think, getting out there and you know, because Amish have told me, you know, I'm just trying to make money off of what happened to me. That's not what I'm doing. I am not.
No.
No, I'm not. I could have filed a civil suit on him. I did not. That would be against the Bible. So I did not. But many of us, you know, and it doesn't matter if you don't want to publish your experiences growing up publicly, but I encourage everybody to write something down. If you have children, just write things down and make it so your kids want to know about you. My kids want to know about my experiences and things. You know, just write it down. And Elizabeth has so many vibrant young boys that somehow will want to know. They want to know about, they'll someday have wives and children and, you know, so I encourage everybody, and I'm sure Meg has much more of an extended family, and she could state more to this.
I love what you just said. I love what you just said, Lizzie. And I was the ghostwriter for my mom's book, Plain Anna, compilation we wrote together. But yeah, I took it and turned it into a story. I've been working on mine for years, but I just don't know when I'll like actually finish. And I'm glad that I haven't published my story because I'm still discovering so much and learning so much. And I think the question was like, what's challenging after you leave? I think it's just reiterate what so many of you have shared. It's who do I trust? And then for me, distrusting the wrong people or distrusting the right people. So the first time I, you know, had a suicide attempt and I end up in the ER and then I have to go to therapy, for that whole first year, I was just sure she was like trying to manipulate me. I just couldn't trust her. And it really held up my healing process. And now, so many years later, I work with an awesome trauma therapist. And I've learned that there's so many different ways to heal that I didn't know before. I didn't even have any language for what I went through. Now I'm learning about somatic release and, you know, even some psychedelic therapy. And then it takes so much more than just talking about it to heal. So there's so many different, and then it's like new layers. I couldn't even remember things that had happened to me. And then you go years down the road and you're in therapy and you're triggered. And all of a sudden, you know, now your body is able to remember something and go to a new place. Sometimes I get really, really tired and exhausted of living with complex post-traumatic stress disorder. And I get exhausted realizing that, oh, there's a fractured self that now I have to be compassionate with. I hate this side of myself, but I actually need to learn to love this side of myself, because healing is not just about becoming the best version of yourself, but learning to love the worst part of yourself. It's just very, you know, any trauma survivor can probably relate to that constant healing process. But for me, that's probably the most challenging part. But also, it's also rewarding because now I am in a safe, healthy relationship and finally got there. But it took, almost reaching 40 before I could really learn how to have healthy relationships and learn what makes someone trustworthy or not, and stop that like cycle of, I don't know, just being taken advantage of. Because I had, I was raped outside after I left my marriage, the first marriage. I just went straight into the arms of other abusive men and, didn't know how to see what red flags. Like, I didn't even know what those really were. So
That's so hard.
Meg,
Thank you for sharing that.
thank you for talking about CPTSD because you reminded me of something. I found my therapist notes from like 12 years ago and I was reading the note. And at that point in time, I was in a relationship with somebody where like the documentation specifically says this. I had forgotten this person did this. But what they did is they kept telling me, oh, that happened like 7 years ago. You should be over it now. Why aren't you over this? That is not the reality of living with complex and chronic PTSD.
yeah, there was a
And
former boyfriend that said that to me as well. Like, at some point, you just need to get over this.
yeah, like you can't just turn it on and off. And like, thank you for talking about how it can vary greatly how we deal with trauma, because it can. And we all find different ways to live and cope and laugh and give joy and love in our life despite the trauma. Despite
Yes.
what was done to us against our wills, despite the
Yes.
things that harmed us and our loved ones.
Yeah, I'm one
Yep.
of the like most bright, happy like people. I love all the color I get to have in my life. But then there's
Ooh.
there's like these I saw that. I love it. And I've seen your photo shoot recently. It's so awesome. Like also do a photo shoot, like just moving. It's like that somatic movement, releasing and expressing yourself and doing just some kind of cool photo
Yeah.
shoot. If I could fly all over the US and do a photo shoot for every trauma survivor, I would. Like, I'm actually doing a photo shoot for a woman tomorrow night. It's going to be like an empowerment one. And I'm
I
so
can't
excited.
wait.
I'm so excited. It'll be up to her, like if she wants to share it or not. But yeah, to your point, like you may not just even be sad all the time, but when that trauma resurfaces, like the most helpful thing you can do is talk about it. And you do have to have those safe people to talk about, but sometimes you have no idea who's even safe or what does that even mean,
Exactly that. And then the other part is like sometimes because of the cultural differences between like Amish and dominant culture, and because we speak English as a second language, and because we use English differently, like all of these things, they impact our ability to find safe people in dominant culture. And then when we go out and we have these relationships, I will tell you the one thing I found about writing my book is that writing books helped me remove the emotional labor of having to explain to every single person what I experienced growing up Amish. And I don't have to explain that. You know what I tell people? Go read my book. Not because I'm unwilling to speak. I'm willing to speak when it is something that is empowering to me, something that is beneficial to me, but I don't need to constantly relive that with every single person who's like, well, why are you like this? Well, because I was born and raised Amish, and here I am, 41 years old, and sometimes I still do things with technology that they come out and it's just not the right thing. And why? Because I didn't grow up with this technology and I'm just trying to figure it out. Not because I'm stupid, not because I'm ignorant, not because I can't think. It's because I grew up in an entirely different culture. And so how do you bridge that gap? And so that's one of the things is that when I wrote the books, now I can just say, go read my book and then come back and talk to me.
Yeah, it's so important that everyone understands that their story is their own. And Meg, you even said this in our interview together. You said whether you share your story or not and who you choose to share it with is completely up to you. And I think that's one of the first times, actually, Meg, that it clocked for me. And I was like, oh, yeah, that's so true. Because in my cult, in Mormonism, you learn to overshare because you're supposed to. And I'm sure a lot of you have faced similar things when you're forced to confess all the time, you think everyone should be able to know your business because you're supposed to just tell everyone your business. And there's a beauty to understanding that not everyone is entitled to your story and that you can decide who and when and where to share it. And I also think that a big part of this channel is to educate people on how to be more compassionate to people who have left, because they see someone who's left a cult and just think that their story should be on display. And they say, oh, you left a cult? Tell me about it. Tell me all the crazy things. But they don't realize that that can be highly traumatic and that it can put someone in a headspace that they weren't prepared for upon meeting this complete stranger. And so it's such an important thing for people to understand that your story belongs to you. It is not for anybody else's eyes and ears unless you want to share that with them. And so I love that you talked about that, Mary, and talked about how putting your words into a book can be so empowering and relieve you of that burden of feeling forced, because you're not forced to. You should never have to be forced to tell your story. Relieving yourself of that burden of, hey, I don't feel like talking about that right now. You can go read this on your own time if you so choose, or on your own terms of, you know what, I'm not in the headspace to talk about it now. Maybe in a week or so, or maybe tomorrow, or maybe a little bit later, I'll be ready to talk about that if you're still interested. I think it's so empowering as a survivor to learn just that simple fact.
Well, and I think for me, part of the romanticization has led to people feeling like they are owed every single detail. They've already done it. Dominant culture has been doing this. They fetishize Amish race women. I challenge each of you, go out in public dressed in an Amish dress, a genuine Amish dress, complete with your cup and your bonnet. Go out in public and then go walk the same street or strip or wherever you're going. I challenge you to go out and do that and then annotate the responses of dominant culture. Amish women have been used as fetishized objects by dominant culture men for generations. That's why we have Linda Stoltzfus, who was murdered. That's why we have all of these cases, like Rebecca Byler, who was the most recent one. She was a pregnant woman who was murdered.
Oh my gosh.
They
Well,
follow
there
us
was a
when we're children.
Rosanna.
They follow us home from school. Oh, yes, Rosanna, too.
But that was by an Amish person.
Rosanna Kinsinger.
Yes.
That was by an Amish person that was specifically talking about the Amish women that are murdered by non-Amish men.
Yeah.
I was a child walking home from school with dominant culture men following us home in their cars because we were nothing but objects. And the point is that this Amish women are not your objects or your tools. And
I think, sorry, go ahead.
They get to speak, and they don't need to wait for the approval of anybody to speak their truth. They get to decide when and where and how and if they ever want to share. Nobody gets to determine whether or not they have to talk about the things they have survived. That is their business, and it is up to them to decide and determine when and if and where and when.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I know a lot of people wanted to speak up. Anyone else?
I just know I have, like, every so often I'll have someone, like, be asking about, like, my story. Why did you leave your ex-husband? You know, why was he in prison? And they want to know all the details. So a long time ago, which I guess it wasn't that long ago, but when I first was interviewed by True Crime Daily and then by Cults to Consciousness by Shalise. So I have been so thankful for those two, because when someone starts asking me questions, I literally tell them, are you on Messenger? Or what's your phone number? And I will send them the link and say, here's my story. But if you still have questions, like send me a text message or call me, and I am more than happy to answer any questions that you have, as long as I am comfortable in doing so.
That's great. Yeah, that's great to hear that the channel can be a tool for you and that you feel confident in sharing that interview. And I mean, all of you did a fantastic job at telling your stories and fantastic job today. And I wanted just to wrap up with a few questions from our audience. When we polled everyone and said, okay, out of these three things, which topic do you want? The one that got the most votes was obviously this one. And so I wanted to hear what questions they have for you guys. So there are a couple here, a lot of them around leaving. We have someone who says, I grew up in an Anabaptist community, but it wasn't Amish or Mennonite. I left many years ago, but still have my head covering stuck in my drawer because I can't get myself to throw them away. I wonder how many of them still keep their head coverings too.
I love that Mary's laughing.
Because isn't Mary
Okay.
wearing one right
Let
now?
me- I'm wearing one right now. Okay. Two, the day I escaped, which I also write about, I actually threw my covering on the road by the ministers, and then I burnt my church head covering, the black one, like the rebel that I am. It was so great. I highly recommend it. If you ever feel like you just want to get rid of a token or something that like was so harmful and used as such a tool to manipulate you, just burn it. You can always acquire new ones. Okay?
Many, sorry, sidetrack. Many survivors, that is one thing that they can do.
Yes.
I've heard this from survivors. They'll burn a mattress. They'll burn things that gives them so much release. I advise it. Absolutely. Sorry for interrupting.
Yeah,
Safely.
burn.
Oh,
Yeah,
you're fine.
safely burn it.
I'm telling you, I even have a tattoo of a burning covering because of that.
I
Sorry,
kept
babe.
my covering for a couple years for sure. Like I did have a lot of guilt around just taking it off. But now the most liberating thing I do is wear a man's Amish hat. And it used to be like an icon in 2017. It's kind of an iconic moment. I'm on like Getty Images with my Amish hat on at a New York Fashion Week. And then, you know, I usually wear it when I'm painting or when I'm really, I don't know, it just really empowers me because I know how offensive it is to the culture I come from. And I know Mary wears a male Amish hat as well, but like it's great.
Yeah.
Like it's kind of the opposite of hanging on to a covering.
Mhm.
So I'm probably gonna burn in hell for that. I'm just
Oh.
kidding. Don't
Oh,
believe I
Meg.
will.
Speaking
I
of
love
that,
it.
not only do I have the hat, I have a mutza suit that I wear sometimes too. It's so great. We got it.
Whoa.
We got it. We got it. Yeah.
My butt would never fit in one of those.
Oh, if we just altered it a little bit, you know, I'm sure we can make it fit you. You know, you got to take the measurements right, Meg.
My dad said I have the childbearing hips when I was 14.
Well,
So
I have the childbearing hips too, and I fit in this
You
one. So
too.
there.
Okay. Proud Canadian grandma wants to know. She says, I can't wait to see the episode. My questions are, what was the first thing you did when you got into the real world? And what was the last thing that you did that was just for you? Go get what life has planned for you and be happy. You deserve it. Give your little girl a big squeeze from this grandma's heart. Oh, I think she's talking about Rhea. Okay, so what is the first thing you did when you got into the real world? Probably figure out how to be safe, but let's pretend that you're already safe and you're regulated and you're in a good headspace. What's the first thing you did for yourself?
I shaved my legs
Hey,
and took a
was that
shower.
not allowed?
No, that wasn't allowed. But that was the first thing I did after eating a sandwich because I hadn't eaten for a really long time because of the circumstances around leaving. But yeah, it was pretty
Okay,
epic.
shaving legs. Anyone else?
Yes.
I got my GED and my driver's license and a vehicle. Those were my first things.
Those are huge accomplishments. I just have to say.
It was the first
Yeah,
thing
that's
like
huge.
that I strove and like it was my goal to get done. And I was like everything else I already like even when I was Amish, I often didn't wear a head covering. I used to get really bad migraine headaches and I got used to not wearing a head covering and people would drive by. I would be working outside in the garden without a head covering. Nobody ever said anything. I don't know. And so when I left, that head covering went shoo out the door. But I still have one.
You did not care.
And last year in August, I had the opportunity of being an interpreter for 3 little Amish girls in southern Indiana. And I actually dressed Amish to go and do it. And it was the most awesome, amazing experience I ever had, is to interpret for those 3 little girls that were being abused. And I was able to sit there and interpret to the forensic interviewer. Like she asked questions and then I would interpret it to them, to the little girls. And then they would give me their answer and I would interpret it back to the forensic interviewer. And I got to
Wow.
meet the mother.
Wow.
I got to meet the mother and she like was just moved. She said, they told me they have an interpreter, but I had no idea it's someone from our own people. But those little girls thanked me without anyone telling them to do it. They thanked me for being there for them. And I don't know, it empowered me in so many ways that they will never have any idea like what it did for me by doing that. But I did not have an Amish dress anymore that I could wear. So I still had material and the night before, sat down, cut out a dress and sewed it just for that event. And like
That's
I felt
amazing.
so good about myself.
So good.
But
That's
yeah.
amazing.
Wow.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
How
amazing.
cool that you were able to do that and that you went just to all those lengths to make those little girls feel comfortable. And oh my gosh, it got me choked up. I was like, don't cry. That's so beautiful that you can do that. And all of you have such an ability to connect with people who have left in ways that I could never, right? Because I don't know, I haven't been in your shoes and I can relate in some ways, but what all of you have and the ability that you have to help other people, and even just if you don't do anything but what you are doing right now, it is such an inspiration to people watching, and you are giving hope to those who may be struggling, who maybe came across this video, who maybe heard that you even existed because a friend of a friend of a friend told someone about this person who went on YouTube and talked about how they left. It's just amazing that you're willing to sacrifice so much because it does come with a cost speaking out. And you guys all know that, you know this. It comes with a real cost sharing your story, and the lives that you are changing, immeasurable. No one could ever truly know the impact that you're having.
And the other part
Thank you
Yeah.
for that.
always
Thank
really
you.
it stands out to me is there are so many stories that I have listened to since I was 12 years old, where I hear stories of Amish children that are experiencing CSA, and they have nowhere to go, and they have nowhere to turn, and their mothers turn a blind eye to it and throw them to the wolves, so to speak. And one thing that really gives me hope is I hear this, I see this, I get calls about this, is that nowadays there are Amish women that are standing up for their children and saying their children deserve to be safe in the world.
I
Yeah.
would like to come back around to what Mary talked about, like as an dressing up as an Amish woman and walking down the street dressed as an Amish woman and then walking down the street not dressed as an Amish woman. So that particular day that I went to southern Indiana, so like I left home dressed in my Amish clothes, I came home dressed in my Amish clothes. I was all by myself and I drove over 500 miles that day. So I would stop at gas stations, and like big gas stations, small gas stations, but each one like, it impacted me how guys would literally go out of their way to hold open the door for me. Even the bathroom door, anything. And if I was dressed in my non-Amish clothes, they won't do that. I mean, yes, here and there
They won't even look at.
Yeah, but it was just an all-day thing, and I would get stares, and then I would get in my vehicle, drive away, because I have a big old Tahoe, and here was this Amish dressed woman driving a Tahoe, and I would drive away laughing and be like, yeah, you jerks, come after me, because you're not getting nothing. Like, you won't. You think you can hold open a door and think that is something that you deserve something in return? No, that's an obligation. You're obligated. You're a man, so you should treat me like a lady. But that is something, yes, it stood out to me that day.
Isn't it almost like that when we dress in plain women clothing, it generates more attention than when we fit in with dominant culture?
Well, they say we look sexy. And I'm like,
yeah,
that where it belongs.
Have you ever had men tell you they want a good Amish woman because Amish women don't leave their husbands?
I have had that all the time.
I hear that
And you know what
all
else?
the time on my social media.
So I used to work in cook in bars, sports bars. And so I had some of the regular guys and even non-regular guys that came in, they find out I have 7 children and they're like, wow, how many different baby daddies? And that ticked me off because I was like, they all have the same dad. Well, until I finally realized where they're coming from, like I was no longer offended by it. And they were like, they all started looking at each other and go, oh, here's one of those good women that you never want to lose because she stays around. We need ourselves a good Amish woman. And I look at them and I tell them, nope, not me. Because I am not I am not a piece of property.
Linda, listen, these Amish women are not pieces of property. Give me your Linda listens. Let's start with Mary.
Why you gotta put me on the spot? What did I do to you, Shelly?
Because you always got something sassy to say.
Yeah.
Hold up. I wrote something in my last book that is specifically for Amish race women. And if y'all have criticism, feedback, thoughts, comments, concerns, let me read this to you and you tell me. It's called Amish Race Women. People often treat us as if our intelligence is limited to churning butter. They show us our knowledge is limited to being good housewives. We should discuss the holiness of being obedient and submissive to the men in our lives. People often treat us like we're incapable of thinking beyond this stereotype. They treat us like our value is contingent on being a good Amish woman. They reduce us to property under questions rooted in ignorance and stereotypes. I say, break those stereotypes. Speak your truth. Share your journey as you wish. Above all, you should never comply with their garbage, especially when they're derailing meaningful conversations about actual issues that Amish women face. Don't allow them to reduce you to some fucking butter and a good housewife. You are capable of knowing and seeing. You're capable of thinking beyond these trivial ideas. You're capable of using your voice. Your voice matters. Some people will shake in their boots when you speak because your voice is powerful. Just because people shake in their boots doesn't mean you should reduce yourself to a conversation about butter. You are capable of critical thought. You are a voice that matters. Your life experiences matter. Your story matters.
Love it, Mary.
Beautiful. So good. I love that. Okay, who's next? Meg, do you have a Linda listen?
Whew. I mean, how am I going to follow that? That was so powerful. I think for me, the Linda listen is just, it kind of goes back to something that you mentioned earlier, that, you know, you get to choose how you share your story, or where you share your life or your energy. I chose to move really, really far away from anyone from my community and start a completely new life. And I want every woman to know that you just have a choice. No matter how you grew up or what you're doing now, you have a choice, and you get to decide your fate, essentially. And, you know, I know you can't choose everything that happens to you, but you get to choose. You get to, you know, even if for me, sometimes I do pull back from other survivors from my community, because I just, you know, I don't even need a reason why. It's just, and it's nothing against anyone else. It's just, I am so careful with my energy now, and you get to choose. You get to choose.
Yeah. Beautiful. I love that. Naomi, do you have a little listen for us?
I mean, they said a whole bunch of that's pretty amazing. And I feel like having a voice and choosing, like, you both set your energy and where you share it and your story, and getting to choose who I hang out with and who I surround myself with it's powerful to be able to choose. Because before, I would just kind of go along with the flow and not speak up. And now I believe that it's important, and my voice matters, and my energy and all of that is important for my well-being. And this whole time that I was struggling, I just one day realized that I can change, and I had to choose myself over everybody else. And it's important to choose yourself.
Yes, I love that so much. All of these are kind of going hand in hand, and what's the word I'm looking for? Complementing each other. So you have Mary saying, choose to be you and choose not to be reduced to butter or the image of butter. And then you have a choice, right? Meg saying you have a choice, you can make change. And Naomi, you're just saying take full power of that choice and choose yourself. So I took your Linda listen moment. Elizabeth, do you have one? I gave you one, but I'm sure you have a different one.
I agree with everything they said. Like, I just amen it to like all of it. And mine is, even if you think you can't do it, financially, especially, was mine, where I was used to being a stay-at-home mom. I couldn't do it. And never underestimate that power of getting your first job and stepping out, and never stay comfortable in where you are. Reach out to someone for help if you need it. There are plenty of resources out there. Just do not stay in your box. And I don't know about the rest of them,
That's beautiful.
but God is a vital part of my life, in spite of religion, the way I was treated. I had many God moments, and also many Red Sea moments where God parted the seas for me, where I felt like it was impossible for certain things to happen, and it happened. And there was no other explanation other than God did it. So I don't know where everyone else is on that, but those are my experiences.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And I'm so bummed that we lost Lizzie here
I
in the
know.
conversation. She's probably having tech issues. What she had to offer, though, was great. And I'm so glad that we got her for the amount of time that we did. And this leads perfectly into our last question, just to wrap this all up. Rita and Carol
Yes.
asked, I would love to know if there's a good way to ask someone if they're safe, if they're being abused, or if they need help. Alternatively, if there's a way to let them know that they can contact them for help. She says, I live in an Amish community and I have attended a few Amish births. So I guess what's the best way to help people understand that they are a resource, that they can be that person to reach out to if they need it without obviously offending them and assuming that they need help?
I would lean into this with like my experience escaping. There was a taxi driver who one day I was in the vehicle with the driver, and the driver was talking to my brother and me about some stuff, and my brother gave me this look, and I just shut up. You know, that look. So when I shut up, the driver found a time privately to let me know that any time that I ever wanted to talk to somebody, that they would be willing to listen. And another thing is going to be confidentiality. Before I would speak to the driver, I made the driver promise to never tell anybody. You can't tell my family, you can't tell my community, you can't tell my ministry, you can't tell any single person about what I'm about to tell you. And then, here's an act of like victim empowerment. I disclosed abuse to the driver eventually over a period of time. Be patient. It's going to take time. I eventually disclosed abuse to the driver, and then the driver came back and said, hey, would it be okay if I asked somebody else who helps people who have experienced similar things to kind of like guide me in a direction where you can get help for what you're experiencing? And because that was put back on me, that was giving me the power over my own life.
Yeah.
And again, it can take years to build that relationship.
Another thing I would say is that I never had anyone tell me what to do, like about how I should be leaving or like the choices I should be making. But I did find the people I could trust because they were the ones from the outside that would check in with me. They wouldn't ask private personal questions, but they would just check in like, how are you doing? Because they sensed that something was not right and something was wrong. So they would just check in. And those were actually the people I turned to when it came to leaving. And so I would really encourage anyone that like that lady to stay in contact, not get pushy, shovey, or like very private, but just stay in contact and show these women that you do care, because if they can maintain that relationship, then in the long run, at some point, they will earn that trust and maybe be able to help them in a way they never thought.
That driver, I knew that driver for 6 years, which completely corroborates what Elizabeth is saying. It takes time. It took me 6 years to disclose to the driver.
Wow.
Because
Yeah, I
If
think
I
a sense of safety is important. Meg, you were going to add something?
No, there was somebody that would reach out and would just say, how's everything going? And I never felt like I needed to, she was never pushy, but she cared. And I think another really powerful statement is the moment that anyone does say something or open up, the best thing for me was for somebody to believe me. Just that simple statement of, I believe you. It's so powerful.
This is all great advice. I think just providing, what I'm hearing is providing that emotional and or physical safety net for someone to, on their own terms, come forward without you being like, hey, is something going on? Do I need to call somebody? But just checking in, being a kind person. And I feel like that's how it is across the board with so many people I talk to, leaving all kinds of groups. When I ask them, what was it that got you to trust them? It was, they were just nice to me. And I didn't realize, because I had been taught that everyone on the outside is wrong or led by Satan, or they've been demonized so heavily, that just the simple act of kindness, of realizing that on the outside that that's just not the case, that you can trust people who aren't from the same group as you is what started things going in the right direction of helping them understand that they had options, that they could potentially change their situation. So that's all really great advice. Thank you to everyone who spent the time with me today. Wow, you guys were so great. I appreciate you talking about difficult topics and shedding light on these hard things and being a voice for those who may be listening and seeing themselves in your stories. And I just appreciate every single one of you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate you.
Yeah. Any other final thoughts before we go?
You're always good enough to deserve humans at like the human right of like safety. You have a right to safety and you deserve that, even if you might feel like you don't.
Thank you. It was an honor, Shalise.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I agree, Mary. Everyone has the right to safety, and reach out to someone. Reach out to anyone that you can for help. There are people willing to help, as we saw. I mean, so many comments on our Amish videos. How can I help? How can I help? I live next to a settlement. I'm here. I don't know the best way to reach out. And I think just being that safe space or being in proximity, being kind to those people, it just means so much. So this has been such an amazing interview, guys. I think we went so much longer than anticipated, and we didn't even get to half the bullet points, which is fine. If you listening, if you're interested in any of these people's stories, we have done multiple interviews with some of them. We'll link everything in the description so that you can find it and do a deep dive into their story, as well as their contact information, the books that they've written, their websites, their social media, so you can connect with them if you choose. We love when you leave those words of encouragement for them. It means so much to us, and of course to our guests here. Boosts the algorithm. And of course, liking and sharing and subscribing is another really easy way to support the podcast and what we do. These panels take a lot of combined effort from everybody. It takes Jonathan a good amount of time to edit these together. So we appreciate you guys supporting the podcast just by interacting with the post. If you want to support further, we have a Patreon at patreon.com/cults2consciousness. We have some merch at cults2consciousness.com. If you like this episode, I will link 2 more down here below, especially the first panel we did, which was incredible. More amazing women from 8 different cults. You're definitely going to want to check that out. And until next time, follow your highest excitement, be conscious, and be well.